Alright, so let's talk about JSON. So JSON is an abbreviation for JavaScript Object Notation, and it is a way of writing a piece of text so that it conforms to a so-called protocol. And there's a standard for doing this, and you will probably recognize it. So here we have a object, which is called my object. I have some information, and in the global namespace in the browser, there's a JSON object which has this stringify. And what this will do is it will take this object and convert it to a string. And you will see an example of that here. So this is a JSON string right here. This is how JSON looks. And as you can see, it's pretty close to just plain old JavaScript objects. The differences are very small, like you have these double quotes, and that's pretty much it really. So I have this string, and then I have json.parse, and I convert that string into a object, a JavaScript object. So these two are used to converting a JavaScript string into an object and an object into a JSON string. And for the most part, JSON is used for sending data over the network, and you will use this quite a bit as you progress through your career. Alright, so let's dive into Ajax. So Ajax is it's a term that we use for doing network requests from JavaScript, and a network request is just a call to some server somewhere. So what you're doing is that you're saying, okay, I have this function, I have a URL, which is an identification of some place on the internet. Go to that place and return to me whatever is there. And if you find something, tell me, otherwise give me an error. And that's pretty much it. So I have this fetch function. This is a global function inside most modern browsers. And then I give it this URL to a API. And then I do a .then, which takes a lambda function or an anonymous function that has some type of response object, and then we assume that the response is going to be JSON, so we call .json, return that, which is then going to use another then function, which is going to take the JSON that we received, and it's just going to log that out. Now, if I copy paste this, and I go to my browser, and I open my console and I paste that in, as you can see, it takes a little moment, just a few moments, and then it returns a success of some sort. I open this and I have two objects, a success object, which is something which is just provided from that API, I suppose, and then we have the contents, and there's some copyright here. And here's a quote, because the API we're connecting to is a quotes API. And in that array, quotes array, there's one single element, which in turn holds a bit of information. And this is what I got from doing that Ajax call. And that's all Ajax is. It's a way of getting data from a server somewhere on the internet. Sometimes it's going to be your server, and in this case there's this public API that I borrowed just to show you a demo of how you use Ajax. Now let's say that you wanted to send some data to your server. Let's say that a user is going to log into your website. You created this amazing experience and now you want to log in, so they're at that login form. Well, the way you could do that is that you can use the fetch function again. You can give it some URL that points to somewhere, and all you have to do, instead of getting information, you add this object which holds a few keys with some data, and that's it really. Then you have the same type of structure like then, and then you have a lambda function or an anonymous function. You get some type of response, and then you have another then after you parse the JSON, and then you log that out. This is just a trivial example, but I just wanted to show you that you can send data as well as receive data. Okay, so let's talk about cross-origin resource sharing, or CORS. So every browser, and in fact the JavaScript standard, there is something called a cross-origin policy, and what that means is that you cannot make an Ajax call to a domain or a web domain, a website, without the script that is firing off that Ajax call coming from the same domain. Or alternatively, the server that the call is being received from is going to have to allow that in essence. So what you're saying is that the server has to allow cross-origin requests. Now, what's going to happen is that most of the time you're not going to have that type of structure in place. Like most servers will not let you do this. So if I do something like this, I copy paste this thing here, and I go to my browser and I fire this off, I'm going to get an error message. And the reason why I'm getting this error is because Google doesn't want just random scripts all around the internet to fire off on their servers. Most of the time when you can do these types of API calls is that there is some website or some service that actually allows you to do that. So if you find one of those, that's often a public API, that's what we call them. That's where you can get some data. But almost every website has this disabled because it poses a security risk. So it's important to remember this, so you don't think that you can just do fetch calls just willy-nilly to any domain. It's in fact very rare that a regular website lets you do this. You have to go out onto the web and search for APIs that are publicly available for this to work.